Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 709. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. The first is that once a definition for an object or concept is agreed upon, it's far easier to have a discussion without getting confused. A second and equally important benefit is that the definition provides a platform for establishing attributes that can be used to describe the object or idea. Attributes are critical because even with a definition, we need to communicate and measure nuances. Just think, if we only had one word for rain or hot, a lot would be lost. Today, we focus on 4 basic attributes of flow. We also have a visit from Tony Timbol, who brings his To Tell a Story column to the podcast. In this installment, Tony and I talk about Agile requirements. They really do exist. Really. Lean and Agile Basics, 4 Common Attributes of Flow by Thomas M. Cagley, Megan E. Cagley. Definitions provide several benefits. The first is that once a definition for an object or a concept is agreed upon, it's far easier to have a discussion without getting confused. A second and equally important benefit is that the definitions provide a platform for establishing attributes that can be used to describe the object or idea. For example, if you were describing the flow of water, we could use direction, speed, and volume to describe and measure the flow. If we use Daniel Vacante's definition of the flow of software development and maintenance, which was the movement and delivery of customer value through a process, we can identify a common set of attributes that can be used to describe flow. Attributes are critical because even with a definition, we need to communicate and measure nuances. Just think, if you had only one word to describe rain or hot, especially hot these days, a lot would be lost. As with many concepts in Agile, different people have different perspectives on flow attributes. I know, I asked. For example, Scott Ambler suggested a couple of attributes, smoothness and scent. He added, if the flow is turbulent or smells bad, there's likely an issue somewhere. Mike Burrows, the author of Kanban from the Inside, responded with several attributes, including smoothness, timeliness, good economic outcomes, and complexity. Daniel Doron added low WIP, work in process, and slack. Teasing a thread from these comments and other sources yields 4 high-level attributes that are useful on a day-to-day basis. The first is capacity. How many items can be in progress at any one time? Not in process, but being worked on in progress. Pace. The speed at which work items move through the process or value chain. Variability. The level of inconsistency inherent in the process. Value derived. The amount of benefit that ends up in end user's laps when it exits the process or value chain. Each of these attributes can be measured. For example, flow velocity and throughput are measures of pace. The next section in this longer theme will tackle metrics specifically. Each attribute can be described, broken down, generating a cascade of attributes that can be used to better describe the concept or to measure nuances. For example, if we're using WIP to measure capacity, attributes such as touch time, status, slack, and open item aging might be useful attributes to more deeply understand WIP. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to reach out to us at spamcastinfo@gmail.com or leave a message at 01-440-668-5717. We look forward to the conversation. Tony Timbol, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thanks, Tom. I'm really excited to be here. I would love the last 2 times we chatted about this stuff.
You know, Tony, this is, I think, really important, this whole concept of agile requirements, because it's one of those things that's often overlooked. I think people have spent a lot of time in agile talking about what they felt were the sexy things. And let's face it, the blocking and tackling, things like work entry and things like agile requirements probably are not the sexiest things in the whole world, but without them, no agile for you. Tony, today, let's spend our time on the To Tell a Story column talking about the requirements life cycle. Our requirements are born, they go through teenagerhood, they have hormones, they run around in cars, they crash, burn, get old, and die, right? That's the life cycle of requirements. No?
That's awesome. Yeah, so when we talk about the life cycle of artifacts, or the readiness states of artifacts. So when we built the Lean Agile Requirements pipeline framework, we had to define what's its natural life cycle, because we wanted to abstract the artifact. In other words, people should be able to create different things that represent the way they package and consume information. So if an organization likes a vision and goal document, and then a lean business case, and then a calendar roadmap and PowerPoint, if that's what they like, that's what they like. There's no problem. They should be able to use that. And organizations should be able, and those represent requirements. Obviously, those aren't user stories. So how do you get from that to user stories? And so the idea is that when we talk about a requirements artifact and its particular life cycle, like a plant, we say, look, whatever the ideas that you have, they're going to go through natural life cycle. How they're packaged, we don't care, because you have freedom and discretion of how you want to package that. But a requirement's going to go from being expressed, and it's going to go from being explored, it's going to go from being inspected, it's going to go to be refined, and then it's going to reach a level of consensus before that requirement, an individual one or a grouped one, is then said, yeah, this is ready. This is good enough now for it to move forward to hand off to development. And so that's the requirements artifact life cycle, the readiness states of a requirements artifact. Now, the requirements artifact can be anything. It can be a PowerPoint. It can be a Microsoft project plan. We break it down into 2 basic.
Oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. You said a bad word. I told you this was business safe, Tony. Microsoft project plan. I mean, that's now I've got to edit.
Not a lot of people you still use it. Regardless of the artifact, this is a judgment-free zone. This is a judgment-free zone when it comes to artifacts. You can use what you want, but it's going to go through this natural life cycle. But at the end of this life cycle, if you subscribe to the pipeline framework, you're going to do something unique with that artifact. You're going to produce epic statements that are consumable by agile teams. And that closes the gap between aspirational scope to executable scope.
Why are we talking about the life cycle of agile requirements artifacts rather than just the output of what the team does? Isn't it just the value that matters?
That's a great question. So one of the tensions that exist in the community is, look, trust teams to do what they need to do, equip them and empower them with all the information that they need, and then inspect their work product and make the corrections through fast feedback. That sounds great on paper, but when you have to scale that with a large organization with more than 3 or 4 teams, you have communication issues and interpretation issues, just the way people work. So this framework is really more to address the scaling challenge with large number of teams, as opposed to, you got a small startup, you got 2 teams, you don't need this. You're going to be close to the work. You're going to be talking all the time. You don't need a lot of formality. Just get it done, and you're going to be good. But when you got 100 teams, 7 different budgets and you're trying to coordinate this activity, getting organized and managing your requirements pipeline in a way that is synchronized with the development pipeline is a challenge. Now, the SAFe framework, the LESS framework, they try to address those with different methods and techniques, but they never address the challenge that the business has of actually getting good requirements to the teams. There's always the assumption when you read those frameworks that these great requirements appear magically, and these features and user stories and backlogs get created, and now everything is ready to execute. That just doesn't work in the real world.
Oh, come on. We all believe in hopium. Okay, so all kidding aside, as you were walking through that scaling issue, all I could think of is this is why small organizations just abjectly find a way of blowing the pants off of these large organizations, because they can be more nimble. They don't have to go through all of these hoops. And the only reason a lot of these larger organizations exist is that they're barriers to entry, right? So is this requirement for requirements frameworks an embedding of inefficiency, or is there a way to make this efficient?
So smaller organizations are more nimble by the very nature of the fact that the number of connections between all the subject matter experts is less, right? So you've got the Dunbar limit, which is a real limit that says, look, human beings can only have so many relational social connections to get anything done. So therefore, the smaller those nodal intersections, the more efficient the organism is going to be. A small organization, the more efficient organism. Problem is that you've got large organisms that have to create more complex networks and neural networks. And so the SAFe folks have addressed their way of doing it, the LESS folks, others, and so forth. So this is an attempt to help the larger organizations that have those embedded delays to act more nimbly, like a smaller organization, to implement within the business side what we call lean agile requirements teams. In other words, you as a business should be working in an agile way, just like your development partners. Now, that doesn't mean that you're coding, but it means that your work product requirements have to be developed incrementally, just like your development partners develop code incrementally. And so establishing rules, and we have an onboarding process, and that's one of the ideas that are part of the Agile Lean Requirements Pipeline Framework, is that business teams need to form that are agile teams. They can be Kanban or Scrum, whatever, self-organizing. And their whole way of doing things is to say, we're going to produce requirements incrementally that's synchronized with development so that we are very much like a smaller organization. We're going to be close to the work, close to the teams.
Tony, thank you for bringing your wonderful To Tell a Story column to the Software Process and Measurement Cast. By the way, Tony, we are probably, next time we get together, going to talk about, perhaps debate Dunbar's limit, given that there's no actual data and experimental information that take it from the chimpanzees that it was actually developed from to human beings. So we might not be limited by 246 or, that kind of a Dunbar.
I'd love to talk about that. That'd be a great idea. Yeah.
But that'll be fun. Interestingly enough, one of the other people that have been on the cast multiple times has suggested that a lot of social science is little less than rigorous in terms of repeatable experiments where you can get the same answer multiple times by running these social experiments. So, but neither here nor there. There probably is a limit. What I really like about the ideas that you're espousing here is that they are important to helping organizations act more nimble. And that's an important concept that I think we can all get behind. And very frankly, you were absolutely right. I think most frameworks wave a magic wand, whether it's even if it's Scrum with one team, wave a magic wand and say, well, first you get a backlog or you get a set of requirements and then you do all this other stuff. And the other stuff is wonderful and it's important and it's great to do. But I'm sorry, I don't have a magic wand. If I did, well, hey, there'd be world peace and we'd end hunger and all that kind of stuff. But perhaps you've gotten a magic wand and you can solve this requirements thing. So Tony, how do people get in touch with you? How do they find out about your new framework, your new ebook, your wonderful tool, all of that?
Sure. TonyTimbol.com. I'll be blogging about this as extensively. Also, the ebook is free to anybody who wants to trade their email address for my mailing list and stay in touch with my eventual newsletter. I'm going to have a LinkedIn newsletter about this, but essentially you're going to be provided with material on the ebook. So it's just really I'm trying to build my email list and my network that way. So the ebook is yours to have for your email.
They don't even have to get a tattoo?
No tattoo.
No tattoos. Tony, thank you for bringing your wonderful To Tell a Story column. And thank you for letting me to tell stories along the way.
You bet.
In Reread Saturday News, this week we begin our reread of Coaching Agile Teams by Lyssa Adkins. I am rereading my Kindle version of the book. The front matter includes forewords by Mike Cohn, Jim Highsmith, acknowledgments, introduction, and a section titled About the Author. The main body of the book is in 3 parts, comprised of 13 chapters. It's indexed. That's me with a big thumbs up. Useful for reference books. I estimate this will be a 16 or 17 week reread, depending on travel. Check out the whole installment of our logistics and introduction to Coaching Agile Teams. Link in the show notes. Remember, buy a copy, read along. Next week, we'll dive into Part 1, Chapter 1, Will I Be a Good Coach? In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast for 710, Daniel Daron returns to the podcast to talk about his new book, Throughput Accounting, Seeing Money Clearly. Daniel begins the prologue of his new book with the statement, "My aim is to have you think differently and lose your reflexes and cognitive biases that are the fabric of society." You will have a lot to think about after you listen. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?